So here's another topic that's worth talking about. We got this 90 first gen 12 valve here, and you can see there's some oil coming out of that exhaust manifold there, and also here. So you'll be running this thing, and you'll actually be able to see bubbles and gurgles of oil coming out of there. And yeah, it's mostly oil. Well, a lot of it's condensation. So what'll happen is you'll go on the Googles and you'll type in Cummins oil leaking from exhaust manifold, and you'll get some threads on the Cummins forum. You go in there and cruise around, and then you see a whole bunch of guys bickering about waste motor oil and how it's the valve covers, and you don't know what you're talking about and all this stuff. It's like, okay, well, look, that is clearly not a valve cover leak. That is a valve cover leak, not a valve cover leak. Valve cover leak. Valve cover leak is not going to cause oil to actually gurgle out of there and drip down. So what's going on here? Over time, these cast iron exhaust manifolds, they shrink a little bit. Same thing that happens on the Hemis. That's why they break exhaust studs all the time. So what happens is you got this stainless steel gasket in between there, and then you got some bolts, and then you got two large pieces of thermal mass. Over time, the manifold shrinks. It gets smaller this way, and it also bends in this way a little bit. As you can see on the back, it's dry. A little bit wet on this one, but this side's dry. And this side actually had a stream coming out. So this manifold has shrank this way, and it's also bending in. So what you're getting here is diesels don't really get as hot per se as gas engines because they're way more thermal efficient. More energy gets converted into power and not into heat. So what you end up with is condensation. You get valve stem seals that leak. These things have massive compression, so you got multiple compression rings and oil rings, and they're under boost a lot, and so there's a lot of pressures that change inside here, and a lot of heat and pressure inside this manifold. So when they're cold, they're at their most shrunken point, and as it heats up, the metal expands, right? I think it's like 3 thousandths per foot per 100 degrees or something like that. I don't remember exactly, but so they'll actually seal up after it gets warmer. So I don't know if you can see this one back here. See, there's no indication at all of a leak. And then the further back we get, like that one back there, that one shows signs of a leak, much like this one. So the closer to the center, it's more rigid because you got both sides of the manifold, and then you got the turbo and everything. So what happens is, you get cold start, there's condensation in the engine and the oil system. There's no PCV on these, so there's just a road draft tube, which basically just dumps all the vapors right on the ground. So there's no positive purge of any vapors, so any of the crankcase vapors that build up just kind of stay in there. So that's one of the problems. The other thing is that you get condensation in the exhaust, and then you have valve stem seals leak, and injectors that drip. Maybe that's a possibility, but that moisture comes out of these cracks because it's easier. It's like electricity, it's lazy. It wants to go out the easiest way possible. So that's what happens here. Now, how do you fix this? You really have two options. Well, you got a couple options. First one is that I almost guarantee you most of these bolts are going to break. So it's kind of a pain in the ass. You got to decide whether or not this is something that's really worth it to you. See, somebody's replaced those bolts before already. So those ones back there, guarantee you those are going to break off. So it's kind of like you have to decide if you want to go full bore or not at all, because you're going to have to replace this manifold most likely, and you're going to have to drill out a bunch of these holes. It's a pain in the ass. So you're going to want to try and if you can get the bolts all off and get it all apart, then you can either take it down to a machine shop and have them try and make it flat, but that's it's already shrunk. So that's one benefit of machining it, but it'll never be exactly perfect. Or you can try and replace it if you can find a new one. That's another problem. But you're like, oh yeah, O'Reilly's or Napa has a Dorman version. The cheap junk, absolute crap Chinese version. You don't want to use that stuff, man. So if you can find a new one, they're going to be expensive. Also, they got aftermarket ones like AFE and stuff like that. But man, I've seen so many of those crack worse than the factory ones. I got a video on my channel about a third gen that had an AFE manifold I put on that cracked within 2 years. You know, just completely split, basically. So that's what's going on. You know, it's a combination of problems. Is it a huge deal? No, not really. Is it an annoyance? No, not really. Is it going to be expensive to fix? Yeah, it's going to be expensive to fix. You know, as long as these bolts come out, you know, if the bolts start breaking off, that's a whole nother deal. Because these are all through drilled, so you're going to get corrosion on this side and this side. And same thing here. Look at that. I mean, that's not coming out of there. I can almost guarantee you that. So you're going to have to, this is going to cost money to fix this. And that's why it does it. It's because of shrinkage and corrosion. See, I could probably actually, I'm not going to be able to pick that up on camera, but I can actually move that gasket with my finger. So there's actually enough space in between there to move that. So that's what's going on. Manifold shrank, and you have condensation from the engine coming out of there. That's what the deal is.